Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing. What is going on? Can you guys hear me? We're live.
Weed car. We're never gonna give you up, and then we're gonna let you down.
Why?
Squeak, I'll break your feet.
Was this planned?
At least I didn't sing it.
Yeah.
I just said.
Yeah.
We were gonna run around and desert you. Maybe it was planned, Andrew. But we might gonna make you cry, and we might gonna make you say goodbye.
Never gonna lie and hurt you. Okay.
This is both quite a long here. I don't know.
All right.
Squeak, I'll break your feet.
Where's Raz? Is he gonna be here this time?
I know. We already did the Rickroll, so unfortunately we won't be seeing him.
Yeah. Okay. Well. Anyway, though, let's wait a little bit for the cast of people to show up because I noticed after the speaking of which, what'd you guys think of the music video?
Jonathan here. Oh yeah, I forgot. Which music video? Oh yeah, the S160s. I was at a funeral that day. Ooh.
Oh, I am so sorry.
I'm here. Somewhere.
What?
Yeah, I was told to leave the funeral because I was jacking off. I mean, what? What? What the fuck?
That showed up on the... Josh, that was on the stream! I know he's joking, but still.
Dude, seriously, what the fuck is wrong with you?
I mean...
It was a joke. Anyways.
But, I mean, at least it's not as bad as playing Clash of Clans at...
Okay, can I tell you where I got that from? No. I found a meme on the internet. It had a photo of Shaggy looking like he was jacking off, and it said, when you're jacking off and you're told to leave the funeral.
We're not getting monetized today, that's for sure. But that's okay, because YouTube's algorithm is broken.
YouTube is shit anyway, so...
And the thing is, I don't want to make a single dollar on YouTube. I don't.
Yeah.
And that's why I make those music videos, because if I get copyrighted, I don't care. Unless it's... The thing is, none of that footage is mine. Absolutely none of it.
Yeah, no, maybe you could mention at least... Maybe you can at least mention the original creators.
Yes, I do ask and mention the original creators of the footage in the descriptions. Unless I forgot to put in the description, but if I forgot, then I will do it. If someone reminds me anyway. But none of the footage is mine. And if anyone who actually provided that footage is watching right now, thank you.
Yeah.
And you are amazing. You make amazing footage. And if I'm making you uncomfortable by taking your footage, then just tell me. Just tell me, and I can take down the video for those. But anyway.
In all reality, sharing is caring.
That sounds incredibly communist.
It is. What the hell is that noise?
What was that? What was that?
Yeah, you need a 5/16 or a 3/8. Probably my brother if you guys heard the background noise.
Okay, well guys, let's actually get to the subject at the end. So, before anything, I just wanted to mention that I'm a mess today. I went to sleep late watching one of the videos of the Ohio Central, and then woke up the next morning and I forgot to accept the images for the cool wall today. So we don't have cool wall today, sadly. Oh, we'll be getting to that, Tyler. We'll be getting to that. But
1/4 is not what I want.
But we're gonna be talking about the Age of Steam Roundhouse, which is
This one was probably in the works for a little while.
yeah. This one was in the lineup for a long time, but we decided to stack on a couple of things because we found some more interesting matters that were also more relevant at the time. But now that we've gotten most of those out of the way, we can go back and talk about some of the juiciest stuff. We're going to be talking... Okay, Josh, but...
I really think John would work really well in a burning subject, especially with his sex jokes.
But, to say the least, we are going to be talking about all 24 steam locomotives at the Age of Steam Roundhouse. And we will also be including some visitors, as well as talking about how the Age of Steam Roundhouse actually came to be.
Because I know how I'd feel if I did that.
So what shall we start off with? The actual origins of the roundhouse, or shall we talk about some of the locomotives first?
Locomotive. John says the locomotive.
Jim?
Ooh. I'm not a huge expert on the Age of Steam Roundhouse, so I guess make your pick. Hang on.
Well, just to get...
I have an idea, Andrew.
What?
Maybe when we go to the Age of Steam Roundhouse, you and I both can record some footage. I could send the footage I record to you, and you could make a video on us going to the Age of Steam Roundhouse.
Maybe, but
good idea.
So we're gonna, as I said, we're gonna be talking about all of the steam locomotives over there, including ones that have visited. And yes, we will also be including ones that are, being restored over there, like McLeod River number 19, which and we'll also be talking about some obscure locomotives that recently went there. But first, before anything, let's actually get to the history of possibly I actually forgot to mention this, but the Age of Steam Roundhouse, in my opinion, is one of the greatest preservation sites in America.
Andrew, one of the best. You're forgetting one of the most important things when it comes to railroad.
And what is that?
Coaches and freight.
Well, the thing is, the funny thing that you mentioned that actually, not only do they maintain their steam locomotives well, but they actually have a very high stock of vintage rolling stock that they've cosmetically restored, and some of them they actually get to use properly. And not to mention, the Age of Steam Roundhouse also restores coaches that are on lease every once in a while to other railroads. So that's pretty cool too. So they got... I don't like that sound, but... You're trying
to do my Steve Rambo noise, aren't you?
Jim, just do it. Just do it, Jim. Just do it. What are we doing? What is this?
This is Gucci Moochie. Oh my God, no.
Nope. 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 Nope.
Hang on. I got something I want to mention on stream. So yesterday, or the day before yesterday, John and I were out in the yard, and his truck went by, and a bale fell out of it. We ended up grabbing the bale, leaving it outside for a little bit to see if someone would claim it. And after nobody claimed it, we took it in the barn and sat on it.
Hey!
What?
Wait, someone said I missed Jim's Stewie impression.
Do your Stewie impression, Jim. What the deuce? That's nasty. Hey there, you like popsicles? Every one of you. Okay, I remember this? Hey, man.
Let Jim speak.
Fine. No, I think that the only real Stewie line that I can do is, what the deuce?
Homie, you really need to stop.
Nasty.
Okay, but anyway, though, So
I gotta stop taking my baths during Peter shenanigans. I get popsicles in the cellar.
let's get to the actual history, though. So, the Age of Steam Roundhouse is actually, well, most heritage railroads or most museums use buildings that were originally built almost 80 to even 100 years ago. The Age of Steam Roundhouse is actually quite different in that regard. Originally, the Age of Steam Roundhouse wasn't a roundhouse at all. It was just a scenic railroad, known as the Ohio Central Railroad, a small branch line for, of course, small tourist trains, in which it was ran by a man known as Jerry Joe Jacobson, which for some reason me and my dad like to make fun of his name because Jerry Joe Jacobson. Sometimes we like to call him Jack Joe Johnson, Jelly James Joe Javison, Jerry the Third.
It's starting to piss me off.
Okay, but anyway, Jerry Joe Jacobson. The funny origin story is from what I've heard anyway. From the origin story of Jerry, from what I know, is that one day he was, well, when he was 14, I think, he was kind of
years old in 1957.
to say the least, when he was young, he got the chance to ride behind a Baltimore and Ohio mountain type.
No, he didn't get to ride behind it. He got to drive it. I wonder what
That's even better! He got to, when he was 14?
Younger than Andrew, anyway. It's because it was the dying days of steam. Give the man a break.
Yeah, and, well, the thing is, he got grounded. But that was the birth of one of the greatest preservationists in America. In which, first, he actually, of course, hosted the Ohio Centrals with 34 acres of farmland, and from what I remember, well, sorry. As I said, I'm tired. I'm sorry if I get most of this crap wrong. No, not crap. But anyway.
It's going to kill us, that's for sure.
Yeah. But he started his railroad, of course, and he started collecting a series of certain steam locomotives. Most of them, which we're going to talk about, are orphaned. Like, certain orphaned locomotives. Josh, can you, can you mute your mic when you're not talking? You guys? Thank you. But, so originally he started this as a collection to preserve as many steam locomotives as he could, because he was hoping that someday he would run all of them. But, well, he did, and...
Not that was going to happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, especially because certain locomotives were in below subpar condition. But,
yeah.
He was a dreamer, a real dreamer. But with the Ohio Central Railroad, he also ran revenue freight on there too, with his collection of steam locomotives. But eventually, he started collecting so many steam locomotives, he had a bit of a choice to make. So he had quite a long stretch of track to actually run his locomotives, but he didn't have much space to actually keep them safe. So he had two choices. Either he could sell the Ohio Central Railroad and create a brand new roundhouse to keep his locomotives safe and maintain them, or he could keep his railroad and keep his locomotives running, but with no area to protect them or really maintain them. And so he, in my opinion, did the right choice. In which he sold the Ohio Central Railroad, and he built the very first roundhouse since 1953. With 18 stalls and a 115-foot turntable. This, to say the least, was quite an impressive place for a modern roundhouse. And with 15 stalls, well, not 15, 18 stalls, you could store quite a lot of locomotives depending on their size. And the biggest locomotive they have over there currently is well,
That's the Grand Lake Erie 643.
which is
Lake
actually
Texas type.
yes, but currently it's still in pieces since the locomotive was so big they couldn't transport it via by rail or by truck, especially because the rail it was landlocked. But we'll get to that in a little bit. We've talked about 643 in a couple of videos back, but
Yep.
this, as I said, was the first time a roundhouse for steam locomotives had been built since 1951. It was full-sized, fully operational, and he spent every ounce on it. And not to mention with a large area of trackage to actually run smaller locomotives like switchers. Especially Jerry Joe Jacobson's favorite locomotive, number 12, which we'll get into number 12's story in a little bit. Which, side note, that's an interesting one. But sadly, I must say, Jerry actually died a couple of years ago. And
2017, he was 74 years old.
Although the thing is, number 12, his favorite locomotive, that locomotive was under restoration when he passed away. So he never got to actually fully see number 12 run again. Which I'm going to be honest, that's
sad. That's depressing.
Depressing.
F in the chat, everybody.
F in the chat. F in the chat. If there's anyone still here, F in the chat for Jerry Joe Jacobson, Jackson Johnson, Jelly James Joe.
Let's just call him Jerry.
Yeah, we'll just call him Jerry. But I mean, at least it's not as bad as Sir William Balin Cullen Butlin III or something like. Who was the guy who owned that one land with the and preserved those LMS locomotives?
Sir Billy Butlin.
Yeah, Sir Billy Hayden Butlin. Okay. But anyway.
Wait.
Hmm?
Did you say Sir Willie? Sir Billy.
Sir.
I just heard Willie.
That might have been my wrongdoing, but
That's fair. Oh well. No, that might just be you being a complete idiot, Josh. No, I was moving some of the stuff into the building. I was listening while doing it, and I heard a name, and it sounded like Willie, but I didn't know. So
okay.
It's Billy.
So let's start with their smallest locomotive. And what is their smallest? Because of course it's this tiny thing. Hold on, let me just get to the history. Because their smallest locomotive is Carnegie Steel Company number 14, which is a tiny, absolutely microscopic standard gauge 040. Like, if you thought that the Y7 in the UK was tiny, this was microscopic. Those are not my words.
A microscopic engine. How small are we talking about?
Well, to say the least, it can fit in this room.
How microscopic was it again, you said?
Well, I'll get to the actual dimensions of the
What engine was it again? Sorry?
It's a small little 040 porter tank engine.
Yeah, road number in...
road number? Carnegie Steel Company number 14.
14.
So...
Carnegie Steel Company number 14.
And surprisingly, number 14 is actually one of their older locomotives, despite not having ran in a very long time.
It does look small, but it does look bigger than a Y6, than a Y7.
Try finding the dimensions.
Because of that huge chunk of a saddle tank on top of its boiler.
Probably. But let's get to the history. So this locomotive was built in 1897, surprisingly. Making this locomotive one of their older ones by H.K. Porter, of course, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Designated, of course, as an 040 ST saddle tank. If you don't understand this, you're stupid. But anyway, with a driver diameter of 31 inches. Tiny little 31-inch drivers.
Like 31 inches, 31-inch driving wheels?
Yep.
God, and Y7 has 42-inch.
Oh, okay. Let's actually find out the true diameter. Well, which one's smaller, the LNER Y7 or number 14?
Let's see. I'm going to consult the episode that Chris did a little while ago of the Y7s, just in case.
Okay, let's see here.
What's with the Y7?
The Y7. You'll need to. It's a small. Jim, can you link him the video?
Yep.
Okay.
Boom. See it here in the chat.
He's watching the video right now. I guess while he's looking at that, might as well read the chat.
I've seen the Y7s before.
Yeah,
Hold on. Driving wheel diameter? Just over 3.5 feet. So that's just over 42 inches. That poor transmission is going to be
so 42 inches, and number 14 drivers are 31 inches. Okay, well, let's find out the rest of the tractive effort geometry.
Steam cylinders.
12 by 16 inch. Well, 12 inches in diameter and a 16-inch stroke.
Wait. 12 by 16 inches, you said?
Yes, 12 inches in diameter and a 16-inch stroke. Wait, 12 inches in diameter? So, hold on, let me get my ruler.
A Y7 has 14 by 20-inch cylinders.
Whoa, okay, so a Y7 has bigger cylinders. Oh my god, okay, so so that means that the cylinder diameter of number 14 is about this. I can stick my head in that.
Yeah, but...
Okay, let's get to the...
What's the boiler pressure?
165 PSI.
140 PSI on the Y7s.
Okay.
Tractive effort figure, 11,040 pounds.
Okay, so they have similar tractive effort. Well, how much does a Y7 weigh?
What's the figure on number 14 then?
The figure?
Yeah.
The figure?
Yeah.
What do you mean? I'm sorry.
The total tractive effort number, you dunce.
The total tractive effort for number 14 is 11,800 pounds.
11,040 pounds. So your engine is more powerful.
So
how big is the wheelbase?
How big is the wheelbase? But let's get to the rest of the history of this locomotive before we get to some more specs, because this is actually interesting. This diminutive locomotive was constructed, well, I already said that, April of 1897 for the Carnegie Steel plant in Corrigan, Pennsylvania. It was later transferred to the U.S. Steel and Dequency as that Mills number 722 is believed that okay, so the funny thing is 14 actually had a tiny tender similar to Jones and Laughlin Steelworks number 58, except for standard gauge, which is a fellow saddle tank locomotive built by the same company. Well, sort of. But let's see. So after it was retired from its duties, it was displayed at the privately owned Station Square complex in downtown Pittsburgh. After an expansion project pushed it out of its Station Square, Fred W. O'Key, a retired executive of the Bessemer and Lake Erie Railroad, donated the locomotive to the borough of Sewickley, Pennsylvania, and nicknamed Tom Thumb. This tiny engine was enshrined outdoors in Riverfront Park, along with its small locomotive tender and a four-wheel bobber caboose. How cute! Eventually, the borough grew concerned about the safety of children playing on and around the locomotive and decided to find a new home for the little switcher. The borough did not want this railroad rolling stock to be scrapped and desired it to be maintained for historical and cultural preservation. Potential buyers had to agree to purchase all of the railroad equipment, including the caboose and that tiny tender. Eventually, the overall goal basically was that none of it would be used for scrap metal. Eventually, in November of 2013, the Aegis Roundhouse finally announced that they won the bid for the tiny little locomotive, which how much does a Y7 weigh?
Weight of a Y7, let's see, total locomotive weight here, weight,
I'm waiting.
Gauge, driving wheel diameter, wheelbase, length, width, height, axle load, loco weight, 22 long tons and 14 counterweights. But it does list the weight of the locomotive in pounds, 50,800 pounds.
Okay, so it weighs more than number 14 then, because number 14 weighs 47,000 pounds.
Jesus Christ.
That is...
How is it that the Americans were able to make something that's a bit smaller? Oh, also what's the wheelbase? Because a Y7 has a 6-foot wheelbase.
I still need to find the wheelbase. But yeah, in 2013, number 14 was bought by the Aegis Steam Roundhouse, where currently it has been beautifully cosmetically restored, which I'm just going to say right now. Number 14, a likelihood of mine. I like that thing. Tiny, little compact, little industrial switcher locomotive, like Jones and Laughlin 58. But let me see if I can find the wheelbase. Or maybe it's possible to look it up. Let's see. Carnegie
Carnegie Steel Company 040. Let's see, Carnegie Phipps and Company, Cornell Power Company 040. Let's see, what the hell does that say? Hold on. Or we can just look up the engine again. Carnegie Steel Company number 14.
Yeah, that we could just look up.
Roundhouse. Let's see, does it have the correct chart? Because the other day, let's see, wheelbase. Okay, build, serial number, wheel arrangement, driving wheel diameter, cylinder bore by stroke, boiler pressure, pulling power, engine weight, fuel, status. Nothing about the wheelbase on the Aegis Steam Roundhouse, motherfucker.
Well, let's see if there's another way we can determine. Actually, since we went over number 14...
Who built it again?
It should say, let me go back. H.K. Porter, Pittsburgh.
Okay. H.K. Porter 040.
If it took us this long just to talk about one locomotive, we're probably going to be here for a while.
We have to break it up, don't we?
Most likely. But next locomotive, let's go on to another tiny one. Let's go on to, since we talked about the smallest 040. Ooh, now this is an interesting one. Their second smallest locomotive is their compressed air locomotive, number 1, which...
Hold on, I noticed something particularly dumb.
What do you get?
In a live chat, there's a guy called McDonald's Happy Meal.
I am 8 years old.
Seeing Transformers last night. Best movie of all time. I'm 8 years old. Yeah.
If you're 8 years old, you might not want to be at this stream just because
this channel does not exist.
We curse.
I'm back. I think he literally terminated himself already.
I'm
back.
Maybe he left. Okay, but
yeah,
welcome back,
I went
Josh.
to check the channel and it didn't exist.
Okay.
Heavy shit. So I think he already realized that he shouldn't be here. Lol.
All right. Well, anyway, though, let's go to their second smallest locomotive, which is technically not a steam locomotive, actually.
Diesel?
Nope, it is compressed air locomotive number 1, a porter. We are going, so Simba, we are going in order from smallest locomotive to largest.
Hello, Simba. How you doing?
All right. Now, let's get on to the history of compressed air number 1. So, number 1 was built in November 1915 by, of course, H.K. Porter in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, with a very strange design. It's a 3-tank compressed air pneumatic locomotive. So it's a very small locomotive that is powered by compressed air only. It has 3 tanks that each reach up to 800 psi. Well, in total, all 3 tanks reach up to 800 psi of air pressure. If you heard me anyway.
Wait, 800 psi per tank?
No, not per tank. In total, of all 3 tanks combined, 800 psi of air pressure. But eventually it got reduced to 250 psi per tank due to limitations of them being used over time. The tractive effort
per tank. So they did have 800 psi per tank.
No, each tank was lowered to 250 psi after a.
Yeah, but you said, but what about the 800 step? That
wasn't, the 800? That's all 3 tanks combined.
Oh, so the total pressure was reduced to 750
for each tank, yes. But now let's get to the tractive effort, which is actually an interesting thing to try and calculate with this thing. But the tractive effort for this, so it's got 36-inch drivers, which is surprisingly bigger than number 14's. So the engine has a tractive effort of 10,000 pounds exactly. It weighs 30 tons. It is 22 feet long. It is 22 feet long. And as I said, 3 compressed air tanks. Currently, it's not running.
Cylinder size.
The cylinder size, I do not know.
If you're going to make tractive effort, also mention the size of the cylinders.
I do not know. Oh, never mind. Found it. I found it. 11 inches in diameter and 18 inches in an 18-inch stroke.
Huh.
Okay. Now, let's take a look here. So, the thing is, for some reason, people have been saying that number 1 is the ugliest locomotive of their collection. I mean, they're not wrong. It does look incredibly strange. But hey, it's interesting because of its actual mechanics. When's the last time you saw a compressed air locomotive? Not to mention one that uses 800 psi in total.
750 now.
So, yeah, these were just basic, small little switchers that they weren't really much used for much. Although, number 1, particularly, was really just found by luck. Just purely their luck. When it was mostly... Well, number 1, as I said, with its impracticality for some things, it was good for switching, but not much more. It was eventually retired, surprisingly, sometime within 1921. No, it wasn't retired then. It was... Okay, so it doesn't say when it was retired, but eventually it was placed on display in the Mel Oat Park in Greater Louisiana. And then, the Louisiana Steam Train Association bought it well, they owned it before, of course, being again sold to the Steam Roundhouse in 2015. So the thing is, since this one was a little bit more heavy than others, this was the first time they needed one of the first times they needed a particular sort of low boy to actually handle this thing because of how heavy it was. But
you mean a low-loader truck?
Mm-hmm. It's also believed, interesting enough, that number 1 is the only standard gauge compressed air locomotive surviving in the U.S. And it is certainly the sole remaining Porter 3 tank compressed air locomotive in the U.S. So I guess these compressed air locomotives were organized in power based on the amount of tanks they had. All right, what's the third smallest locomotive? Southern Wood Preserving Company number 3. This one's probably going to be the least interesting because we've seen a lot of these little tank engines operating. Okay, so this one was built by Alco in 1926 and then actually sold to someone in 1928. It's an 040 tank engine, but let's get to the tractive effort geometry. 40-inch drivers. We're getting a little bigger, of course. Cylinder bore of 16, so it's got a 16-inch diameter cylinder and a 24-inch stroke with a boiler pressure of 100.
24-inch cylinders.
Yes, it's got a boiler pressure at 180 psi with a total tractive effort of 23,500 pounds. Not bad. Not bad for a little 040. But this one's not really the most unique locomotive they had there. Although interesting, it has operated in preservation.
Oh, really?
It was required by the then new Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum in 1964. Which, they are currently the owners of certain famous locomotives. Like,
I know.
Yeah, 4501. I'm explaining some of this to the viewers, but in case they don't know. But eventually number 3 was sold to the Merriman family. Well, it was sold by the Merriman family to Jerry Joe Jacobson. And then, of course, it was trucked to the Steam Roundhouse. So, well, it hadn't had an interesting career. It has had a little bit of significance in the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum. A little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. Ooh, the 4th largest locomotive is
the 4th smallest.
The 4th smallest is Columbus and Southern Ohio Electric Company number 2, which is a fireless locomotive. And you guys know how much I love my firelesses.
You should go see the fireless at the place that I went to.
Well, let's see here. So, okay, this is interesting. Number 2 was built by the Heisler Locomotive Works of Erie, Pennsylvania. In March of 1930, with a serial number of 54. They got, wow, okay, so they got big cylinders. Well, then again, what do I expect from a fireless? Those things have huge cylinders to combat the lower the lower pressure of steam. But anyway, they got 36.
How big are they?
21 by 20 inches. So they got a stroke of 21 inches and a diameter of 20 inches.
You mean 20 by 21?
Yes. They got like little...
So 20-inch bore, 21-inch... 21... sorry, fuck. I forgot how to English.
20-inch
bore, 21-inch stroke.
Oh, no. That's actually reversed. It's a 21-inch bore and a 20-inch stroke.
So they're actually a bit shorter than they are in diameter. Jesus.
Okay.
That's weird.
And so the pressure of that could be made up in this fireless locomotive, which if you don't know how a fireless works, it just
they pump steam directly into the boiler, which is kind of like, which in this case more like a big steam tank.
and
really
then
good for industrial really good for industrial areas where fire is a big hazard. So you don't want any sparks from fuel combustion coming out the stack.
although there is one little detail you missed. When they do pump this preheated super steam into the tank, there's also a layer of a couple of gallons of water on the bottom of the tank, so that the superheated steam can begin heating the water on the bottom of the tank and create more steam as it works. But yeah, the pressure for that would be 250 psi. Not bad, not bad. With a tractive effort pushing at just 14,700 pounds.
Huh.
So it's less than the 040 from earlier. Even though it weighs more and has a higher... Well, then again, fireless, I guess. But the funny thing is, these are called fireless cookers. But as Jim mentioned earlier, these particular fireless locomotives were best suited for areas that were prone to fires or prone to anything that could explode.
Like a TNT factory.
Yeah, in which this particular one was rented out for an electric company, which of course you could probably guess why they'd need a fireless.
Why? Fire hazard. Duh.
Duh! But anyway, little number 2 was built specially for use at the Columbus and Southern Ohio Electric Company, which they generated electricity, obviously. And number 2 and number 1, number 3, there were 3 of these built, particularly. You know, just hoppers full of coal. That's really all that these things did. Not a very special life for a very special locomotive. Eventually, of course, they were retired and donated to the Penn Ohio Railfans Association. For several years, the number 1 and number 2, which were the only 2 preserved, were acquired by the Old Express restaurant in Sharon, Pennsylvania, and moved to its diner display on site in 1974. Over the years, the building and number 2 passed into ownership of Travel Centers of America and went through a number of different tenants. Finally, the structure was scheduled for demolition in 2017, and future plans for the property did not include the old locomotive. In stepped the Age of Steam roundhouse, and with an offer to purchase the locomotive to preserve it in Sugar Creek, of course. And so currently, number 2 is in a pretty good cosmetic shape now. She's got a new number plate, and especially considering that what number 2 used to look like was like one of those weird amusement park things. No offense, Josh.
None taken. The ones at Cedar Point actually look like locomotives, not
toys.
Yeah.
That actually, if possible, Jim, can you show Josh a picture of what number 2 looked like before going to the Age of Steam?
Hold on.
Yeah, if possible.
Yeah. The company again.
Columbus and Southern Ohio Electric Company.
The thing about me is when it comes to locomotives that work at theme parks, if they look like an actual locomotive, they're pretty good. But if they just look like a cheapo toy, like, oh, the whole boiler painted orange and the wheels can be painted red and shaft could be blue, then I got a problem with you.
You saw it, didn't you?
Did it say Old Express Limited on the sides of the cab?
Yes, it did. Yes, it did.
Send me a photo. Let's see just how bad this is.
Yeah, to say the least.
Here's a web page with some potato resolution imagery. Just as
Hold on. Let me take a... Oh my god. Holy shit, I've taken a look at this. Yeah, it looks really bad, doesn't it?
I've seen worse.
Yeah.
It won't load. My thing is being slow. Microwave's on.
You know what's interesting, though? It's kind of interesting that a fireless locomotive is larger than that saddle tank from earlier.
It says Old Express LTD on the side.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one.
I'll tell you what. If it wasn't a fireless locomotive and it actually had a smoke box on the front and they painted the smoke box silver, it would have looked good. But on a fireless locomotive, it just doesn't work with it.
Yeah, it does not. But now let's go.
You see what I mean, right, Andrew?
I know what you mean. For some reason, the smoke box of a locomotive really makes its character. Although I like firelesses, some of them do look odd. I mean, the funny thing is, American firelesses actually have an exhaust port on the front of the locomotive that makes it look like it, quote unquote, does have a smoke box, even though it's just an exhaust for the steam.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
And now let's get to the next locomotive, which is our first U.S. Navy locomotive, number 4, which is another Porter one. It's an 060. It's an 060 this time. Our first, one of our larger ones so far. Well, of course, since, So, number 4 was built in 1919 by none other than H.K. Porter, of course, as an 060 side tank locomotive. Side tank. It is not an S100, but it is similar. It has 46-inch drivers and a cylinder bore of 18 by 24 inches. So the stroke itself would be 18 inches. Wait, no. I got that reversed. I'm 24-inch stroke, 18 inches in diameter.
Yeah, when I'm listing the cylinders, it's always like diameter multiplied by stroke.
Yes. And then the boiler pressure stands up to 180 psi, with the tractive effort pulling out a 25,865 pounds. Not bad for an 060. Not as good as CNJ 113, but pretty good. Although CNJ 113 is incredibly overpowered, but So interesting, after the Revolutionary War, the Brooklyn Navy Yard was established on the bank of the East River in New York. At the Yard's peak during World War II, 75,000 workers helped to repair numerous Atlantic fleet ships while building such famous battleships like the USS North Carolina, the USS Iowa, and the USS Missouri.
I've heard of all of them.
Yep, and I've actually seen one of those in person.
I want to go see the Missouri, but I'm not going to Hawaii just to see it.
Supporting the yard's operations required immense shipments of raw materials and equipment, mostly by rail, of course. A fleet of switch engines, including number 4, was employed to move incoming and outgoing cars, of course introduced in 1919, as a product of Pittsburgh, as I mentioned. Number 4 spent 3 years as a Navy locomotive before being sold to the neighboring Brooklyn Eastern District Terminal Railroad.
Got a T for George.
Yeah. For the following 3 decades, the Brooklyn Eastern District Terminal, they had quite a few steamers that, of course, worked around their Brooklyn docks. In fact, the BET was around 100% steam until Christmas Day in 1963, when the line was finally retired of its fleet of steam locomotives. Fortunately, all of the Brooklyn Eastern District Terminal steam locomotives in service at the time were saved and preserved somewhere. Following its retirement, number 13 of these was sold to George Hart and moved to Reading, Pennsylvania in 1977. The engine was transferred to the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania, where it's displayed until being deemed surplus to the Corps collection in 2010. In October 2011, the Age of Steam Roundhouse took ownership of number 13, which is number 4, just re-lettered. And 2 former Department defense flat cars, in which were also part of the RMAOPA's collection. All 3 items were shipped to Sugar Creek on highway trucks, arriving on December 12th, 2011. Today, number 4, or number 13, whichever you're fine with referring it to as, has been repainted in its original 1919 appearance as U.S. Navy number 4. It now is used in their Steam to Victory events, which the locomotive is brought out of the roundhouse, and of course is designated as a Navy veteran. Quite an interesting history for a tank engine. And that... I just find that this one, I find it funny that this is one of the, well, of course this is one of the smallest. And now we come up with our first tender engine of the day. And it's none other than my favorite Camelback. Well,
Reading 1187.
Yep. Which I actually made up. You might have seen it in one of that short I made on April 1st. We're like, holy shit, what's that, homie?
Yeah, it looks like a 3D printed model of the thing.
Well,
did you know that Andrew and I actually modeled that together?
Yes, we did.
No, I didn't know that. I didn't know that because I'm not a 3D printer expert.
Yeah,
But
Andrew and I both made that.
Yes, me and him 3D modeled a small body for a Camelback to fit on an old River Rossi 040 chassis, which you guys might remember this. But I made it compatible, so if I want to, I can switch out the bodies whenever I want. So.
And Andrew, would you like to see a fair share of shitty carnival trains?
Not right now.
Well, I'm gonna send them though, just if you want to look at them.
Okay. So I think most of us know the story of Reading 1187, and if you don't, then you might want to sit down for this one.
And yes, the top one's a Challenger.
Well, anyway. So
I just threw it in there because why the fuck not?
Let me take a look. I gotta see this now. If
that's the Ringling Brothers circus train, you silly.
Yeah, it's $39.85.
Yeah, I saw that and I was like, oh, let's do this here.
All right, but anyway, let's get onto the story of Little 1187. Reading 1187 was built in 1903 by the Baldwin Locomotive Works, which, as we know, one of the major manufacturers, with 50-inch drivers, cylinder bore of 16 by 24 inches, boiler pressure of 200 psi, and a tractive effort of just over 20,000 pounds. Not quite the mainline powerhouse, obviously, but it was just perfect for yard switching. It had the decent tractive effort, it had big enough drivers to go at a decent speed, yard speeds, anyway.
By the way, just so you know, whenever he uses the word drivers, he always means driving wheels.
Yes, but
in case there are any British people watching out there who may have a bit of a language barrier. Lol.
Well, anyway.
Continue.
These were classified as A4Bs, and if I remember, there were 30 of them built in total, with 1187 being the last, being the only one to remain, in which it spent 50 years as a yard switcher, which, as I've mentioned in previous videos, it burns anthracite coal, which, gave it the reason it became a Camelback. With the soon...
20 of them, actually.
Oh, 20. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, if there were 20. Okay, that actually makes sense. So, anyway, though. After spending 50 years as a yard switcher for the Reading, it was, it was sold. It was sold, what's the name of it? The Colorado Fuel and Iron Company in,
in Birchboro, Pennsylvania.
Yes, don't confuse it with Colorado, New Mexico. Well, Colorado, New Mexico? What am I talking about? Colorado! Anyway.
Colorado, Steel and Iron Company at their
At the-
Brooks plant in Birdsboro, Pennsylvania.
Yes, in which
Colorado, New Mexico.
in which
Hey,
it was
Andrew, well, Colorado, Ohio.
well. Anyway, if I may continue.
Sure.
Yes, you may.
With 11A7 being bought by this new company, and if not all of her other sisters being cut up, 11A7 was then renumbered to number 4. In which, if I remember, it also worked alongside a fellow Reading locomotive, number 1251. If I remember, anyway. But it didn't spend too long at the Colorado Iron Works. It spent, if I remember, about 6 or 10 years. Which the most footage of it actually exists of it over there. There's absolutely no footage of 11A7 actually in action on the Reading. Only action at either Strasbourg or at at the plant. As I'm just gonna call it the plant.
Sure.
But after this, 11A7, of course, being the last operating Camelback, became a magnet for preservation. And so she was bought by none other than the Strasbourg Railroad, in which 11A7, ironically, being one of their smallest locomotives, became the first locomotive purchased by them. Well, actually, now that I think about it, the only steam locomotive purchased by Strasbourg and owned by them to travel to the railroad under its own power. Despite it being the tiny size that it is, it went all the way from there to Strasbourg under its own power. But, well, there were a few issues with this, including having to fix the broken leaf spring. But after that, 11A7 was given a much needed redo, in which after this, approximately only 6 weeks in service, 11A7 was taken off of the main road of the Strasbourg due to them firing it on bituminous coal instead of anthracite, which lowered the boiler pressure and the thermal efficiency. On top of the fact that the boiler of 11A7 isn't very high capacity. So it's not just the coal. It was a bit of a string of events. But they ended up operating 11A7 during the summer months to help with the runarounds at the station. So you could still see it in action for a limited time. But goddamn dogs.
What? What's going on with the doggos?
Hold on. I'll be right back.
Meanwhile, over here, there's a helicopter flying by.
Meanwhile, I'm trying to get out of the
Helicopter. And it's gone. Yep, it's heading to somewhere else.
Fuck it, I'm going to Germany. Anyway.
It's a little intimidating when one of those helicopters flies over. Gotta admit. Like, from what I've heard, they are police helicopters, but they don't look like it. They look a bit more heavy duty, for lack of a better term.
Military, like our C-130s that we have in America.
Let's put it this way: they don't look like civilian helicopters.
C-130s in America, when they're flying over, you may not see much of them, but they've got guns coming out of every corner of the plane of the big planes. It's not even funny.
Okay, I'm back.
That's just a fun fact about C-130s for you.
Okay, I'm back though. But where was
Hello,
I?
Andrew.
Where was I?
Something about a damn dog.
Oh yeah.
We were talking about Reading 1187.
Oh yeah, back to its last runs. So
And it seems that the Strasbourg Railroad, when it was just being kept around for like yard duty, because it turned out it didn't prove to be very powerful enough for the mainline tourist trains, actually hauling stuff from point A to point B. Because
even though ironically, their Thomas has a lower tractive effort.
What I was trying to say is that, not only did the locomotive have a fairly low tractive effort, but, the bituminous coal didn't help much, given the fact that it was built for burning anthracite.
Yeah. Even though 1187 has a higher tractive effort than their Thomas, anyway. But after this, it only lasted about 5 years in service in total, in which it last ran after hauling a National Railway Historical Society train in 1967. It was moved into the roundhouse under its own.
Yeah, that was its last run, but it was only for part of the journey, if I recall correctly.
Only part of the journey, but it was her last run, and it was okay. It was a decent send off. In which then she was transferred into the roundhouse under steam, where her boiler certificate expired. And then, of course, as we all know, it was left out in the open for 50 years! 50 years! Out in the
How
open!
do you leave something out for that long?
50 years left out in the open on a... Not to mention with a wooden cab, and the outside, as you know, don't mix. And so after in total 53 years of sitting out in the open, no care, no love, no life, it was finally bought, of course, by the Age of Steam Roundhouse in 2020, which ironically was exactly 9 days before my birthday when this happened. Oh no, I just thought I'd mention that. But on August 3rd, 2020, the 1187 was, of course, bought by them and arrived at the Age of Steam Roundhouse on August 3rd, where currently it is getting possibly one of the most impressive cosmetic restorations I've ever seen. Which, if you look currently at what she's looking like now, they've completely repainted her tender. They've given her a new coat of paint on her boiler. Her smoke box looks exactly the same as the pictures. All they really need to do is build a new cab, which they actually plan to do. The Strasbourg actually provided them blueprints of the original wooden cab.
They're just going to make one out of steel, I think.
Yeah, not out of steel. I mean, if anyone was going to run this thing again, they'd have to make it out of steel, obviously. But
no, then again, the chances of this thing running again are, very slim.
Very low, because very low. One, it's a Camelback. They're pretty uncomfortable to drive in real life. Two, it's pretty tiny. And what's left?
Three, it doesn't work well on bituminous coal. You need anthracite.
Which, is kind of hard to find now, especially with certain activists out there. Anyway. But, the chances of 1187 running again are low, but not zero. But they're pretty low. So don't expect 1187 to run within the next 50 years. Personally, one of my favorite locomotives at the Age of Steam Roundhouse. But anyway, let's get on to the next one. Which one is the next largest steam? What's the next small one? What's larger than 1187, but small enough to deal with this? Okay, Next one is Sturm and Dillard 060 number 105, which funny thing is this locomotive turned 105 years old. Nice. But this locomotive was built in January 1917 by the Baldwin Locomotive Works, of course. It's another 060. It's another little 060. It's our first 060 tender locomotive, since we don't have any other. We don't have 040 tender locomotives are pretty rare in America, anyway. But they got number 105 has 52-inch drivers, a 16 by 24-inch cylinder.
Wait. Did you say 040 tender engines in America are rare?
Pretty rare, yeah.
Did you know that George R. from Cedar Point used to be an 040 tender engine?
I'm talking about standard gauge ones.
Oh, never mind.
But yeah, like the only other few 040 tender locomotives that I can name of in the U.S. that are standard gauge are like some Pennsylvania 040, and yeah, that's the only other one I can name of at the top of my head. But yeah. Continuing with 105, a 160 psi boiler with a tractive effort for an 060. It's incredibly weak at 13,200 pounds. Surprisingly weak. This particular one doesn't seem to have that interesting of a history. Although it was built in 1907, it was actually sold by 1923 to the Birmingham Rail and Locomotive
Society.
A dealer who bought and sold and used rail equipment on February 23rd, 1929. BR&L invoiced Sturman Dillard at Lower Elk, Kentucky for the purchase of number 51, and SD renumbered the engine to 105. And it went to work at the SD's company owned at the S&D's company-owned gravel pits located at the Circleville, Ohio. Sturman Dillard specialized in railroad construction work. Hold on. We just
Anyway.
Crack open a cold one. Cold, really cold. Okay.
Is it a beer?
Anyway. Yes, located. Okay. Circleville, Ohio. Okay, yeah, this one's. So it basically just worked at a gravel company. Around 1969, Art Davis purchased 105 from the Sturman Dillard for $1,500 in 1961. If only we could buy that kind of money, a locomotive with that kind of money now.
How much?
$1,500.
Oh, that ain't too much.
You can buy a car with that money.
That's cheaper than the bee.
Art loaded his locomotive onto a gondola and had it moved to a former Pennsylvania roundhouse in Erie, Pennsylvania. In 1983, the engine was moved again, this time to the Art's industrial property in Orrville, Ohio. At some point, Art swapped out...
That's near where I live.
At some point, Art swapped out 105's original slope-back tender with the chunky appearing tender now, trailing this 060. But neither he nor anyone else seemed to recall where the replacement came from or where the original tender went. Okay, so it's had a really strange tender swap. Art occasionally fired up his little engine for his friends to enjoy, among them Jerry Joe Jacobson and members of his crew. After Art's passing, an estate sale paved the way for Jerry to acquire this beloved engine, and the number 105 arrived at the H Steam Roundhouse in July of 2015, and today it is proudly displayed at the H Steam Roundhouse. Okay, so it's one of Jerry's friends' locomotives that...
Also, do you know just how close Orrville, Ohio is to Worcester, Ohio?
No, I do not.
Pull up let me get a photo.
I can't pull up a map right now. I can't. Hello, this is me, Arnold. Idiots. Fuck you all. I hate children.
Fuck you, Andrew.
So much. Yeah. Be right back. Yeah. But,
Here. I'm sending a photo right now.
Next locomotive, Wheeling and Lake Erie Railroad 060, number 3960. That's just one number off from a certain... Anyway.
I sent it to you.
Anyway, this one was built in June of 1935 as an 060, of course, with 51-inch drivers, a 21 by 28-inch cylinder. Wow. Okay. This one's got big cylinders for an 060, surprisingly. Anyway, boiler pressure. No, okay, so that's why it's got big cylinder. Okay, so with a boiler pressure of 200 psi, the tractive effort of this thing pulls out, no pun intended, at 41,200 pounds. 41,000. That's not bad. That's not bad. Damn.
Pull out.
That's okay. 41,000. That's actually close to C&J 113. Surprisingly, I did not expect it to be that much. Actually, to save about $7,000 per locomotive over the cost of commercially constructed locomotives, the ever thrifty Wheeling Lake Erie built 20 080 switching locomotives between 1928 and 1930 in its well-equipped back shop in Brewster, Ohio.
Brewster, why are you making fun of my county?
No, it literally says Brewster, Ohio.
I'm going to punch whoever wrote that article. It's pronounced Worcester.
Wait, this is actually Worcester? No, it's literally spelled Brewster, like Brewster.
I thought it said Rooster, but okay.
No, it said Brewster. Brewster. But they were built as 060s after being successfully
How to pronounce it wrong or even think about it are the ones who live in Worcester.
Yeah.
After building, successfully completing and deploying these 080s, the WL&E decided to turn to making 060s between 1929 and 1940. Brewster built 30 homegrown 060s, which were copies of the proven United States Army Railroad Administration design. Oh! So kind of like those horrible Bachmann ones. But anyway. Brewster built, all 50 locomotives included modern, Nicholson thermal siphons in their fireboxes and Chambers front end throttles in the smoke boxes, as well as W and LE practice road number series reflected 10% of an engine's tractive effort. This is an interesting way to number something. 10% of an engine's tractive effort. So they were numbered. So hence they were numbered from 3951 to 3980, and they were classified as B5 060s. Okay. And the larger classes were 5106 through 5125 for the 080s. Okay, so let's see. After 7,220 man hours and a cost of $28,686.56. Okay, so that's how much it cost to build this back then. How much would that have cost to build it now?
Too much.
Nah.
Accurate.
I bet not as much as what it costs to restore a locomotive. But anyway. Number 3960 was completed at Brewster on June 8th, 1935. Nearby at Canton was home to the Timken Roller Bearing Company, and the locomotives and freight cars of online W&LE were used for the test to test the then new idea of applying roller bearings to railroad equipment, completed in September 25th, 1935. With this 060, 3965 was the world's first steam switcher built with roller bearings on all axles.
Actually, Andrew. When was the thing happen that you said? Wonder how much that would be in today's money.
$28,686.56. But holy crap, I didn't actually know this. So 3965 was the world's first steam switcher locomotive built with roller bearings on all the axles, including
28,000,
including tenders, including the tender. As all. Oh, okay. So
600?
Hmm?
Is it 28,600?
28,686.56, and this was and it was built. Remember, this was the money at this time. So remember, this was built in 1935.
1935?
No, this was okay. Not 1935. This was 19. Yeah, it's 1935. Okay.
All right, ready?
Yes.
602,000 with $7.35.
Okay, I was wrong. It is not cheaper than restoring a steam locomotive, because 44.49 cost less than restoring that one by today's.
Okay. Happy I did that now?
Yes. But anyway, I did not know that this locomotive, of all things, would have been equipped with roller bearings. So that's interesting. All 50 Brewster-built switchers became property of the Nickel Plate Road with the December 1st, 1949 leasing of the W&LE by Nickel Plate. The homemade 060s were renumbered 351 to 380, with former W&LE 3960 becoming Nickel Plate Road number 360. During its last year of active duty, 360 was assigned to Zanesville and made its last run under steam on October 31st, 1957. Halloween! Anyway, when it chugged past a cornfield at when it chugged past a cornfield that 53 years later would become the site of the Age of Steam roundhouse in 1957. EXA W&LE 282 number 6008 was chosen for display at Cannes Mother Goose Lantern Park, but was later deemed too heavy and expensive to make the short 4-block trip by a truck nearest rail siding. So the smaller 360 was pulled from the deadline, cosmetically restored on Brewer's shop, and placed into the park on June 19th, 1958. By 1971, the weather had taken its toll on the engine, so the local.
It also new science as far as the masks and whether or not they work.
What's that?
It's news stuff. It's in the background. I'm walking around my house right now. I'm pulling something apart.
Okay, but by 1971, weather had taken its toll on the engine, so a local W&LE fan cut off the boiler jacket with a hammer and chisel and removed the waterlogged asbestos insulation surrounding the rusting boiler and cylinders, repainted it in a thick coat of black enamel. Nickel plate 360 was relettered back to its original identity as 3960. The engine was continued to sit outside and slowly deteriorate in Canton, eventually being acquired by the Silver Throttle Engine Association and Museum. Steam, a group which had formed to restore it in 1970. In 1991, the engine was removed from the park, and after stops in South Canton and Louisville, ended up in Minerva, Ohio, in the mid 2000s. Went with steam low on funds. Jerry Jacobson attempted to acquire the engine, even sending a diesel locomotive and 3 coaches to Nevada to trade for the 3960. However, Steam soon disbanded and was determined that Canton still had legal claim to the engine, setting off a decade-long discussion over 3960's future. What the fuck? After years of communications, the city finally placed 3960 up for auction, and the Age of Steam roundhouse was the high bidder. The wayward switcher was badly deteriorated and in need of significant work, but it was finally home in Sugar Creek and will eventually receive a full cosmetic restoration. Oh, God.
Andrew's crying.
No, that was a long story for such a small locomotive. Okay.
Cool, huh?
That's what she said. But anyway.
No, She said kinky. I said cool.
I think we have time for one more locomotive, and we're going to have to split this into two parts.
Okay. I'm going to show you afterwards.
And this last locomotive is currently, they're only a fully operational locomotive at the Age of Steam Roundhouse. And that is none other than Moorhead and Norfolk number 12. Built in September 1905 as Southern Railway 1643 by, of course, Alco. But the thing is, you might have noticed that it was built as Southern Railway 1643. That means we have a Southern switcher in preservation. And not to mention, you might also notice it has Southern valve gear.
Nice.
But anyway, the tractive effort geometry. Let's get to that shit. The driver diameter is 50 inches. The cylinder bore is 20 inches by 26 inches. The boiler pressure 185 psi with a tractive effort pushing over 32,710 pounds.
That's 710 pounds.
That's not.
Look at that.
That's not bad. That is not bad. That is not bad at all. Oh my god. But anyway, it was classified as an A. It was classified as an A7 for the Southern Railway, and well, originally it served 4 decades, so 40 years in relative obscurity, shifting cars for the Southern Railway. Eventually, the engine was retired and parked in the scrapyard. And unlike its numerous sister engines, however, 1643 got a reprieve from the scrapper's torch when it was purchased by the Moorhead and Norfolk Railway as a small 4-mile-long short line in Kentucky. Renumbered to number 12, the engine was put back into work hauling trains and local clay products. Coal and lumber to the... Okay, so the engine was put to work hauling trains to local clay products such as coal, lumber, and also served as a Chesapeake and Ohio interchange in Moorhead. Okay, so the Moorhead and Norfolk didn't retire its steam locomotive until 1963. So rail fans came from across the country to photograph this obscure steamhold. Among the visitors was a young Jerry Jacobson, then a paratrooper of the U.S. Army's 82nd Airborne Division in 1962, while stationed in Fort Bragg. Jerry would take advantage of the occasional weekend pass to endure a 450-mile Greyhound bus trip to witness Moorhead and Norfolk's steam in service. Number 12 made quite an impression on the young soldier, foreshadowing the third act of this little engine's career. After the Moorhead and Norfolk was abandoned, number 12 was shoved into the Moorhead and Norfolk's ramshackle shed, and that's a fun name. It was shoved into the ramshackle shed in Clearfield and largely forgotten. Jerry Joe Jacobson never forgot about number 12, however, and sought to acquire it for years. In late 2011, the locomotive owner's widow and son agreed to a sale, and plans were made to haul the isolated number 060 to Ohio by truck. What seemed like a straightforward process turned into a 3-month ordeal of permit challenges and truck breakdowns. But number 12 was finally hauled to Sugar Creek and arrived at the Age of Steam Roundhouse on February 7th, 2012.
Hey, I got a question about the thing.
Hold on, let me finish the...
Okay.
Number 12 went to the Age of Steam Roundhouse back shop for inspection, and the Roundhouse crew deployed a repair plan. The boiler was repaired and put back into compliance with Federal Railroad Administration requirements, and a brand new welded tender tank was constructed, complete with with imitation rivets and placed on the existing tender frame. Countless parts were repaired or replaced, including a brand new steam dome lid and a smokestack. Finished with a coat of black paint and fresh Moorhead and Norfolk lettering, number 12 proudly chuffed out of the backstop during the summer of 2018. Number 12 was the first derelict steam locomotive totally rebuilt for service at the Age of Steam Roundhouse. But sadly, Jerry Joe Jacobson passed away in 2017 and was not with us to celebrate the completion of this locomotive. But we're confident that he would have been glad to see number 12's story come to such a happy ending.
Yeah, he would have. But
salute you, Mr. Jerry.
But for my question, were all the truck breakdowns because of the weight of the locomotive?
That could be possible, because
Well,
you remember how heavy locomotives can be.
yeah. Well, it couldn't be as heavy as Michael Starcher. His truck breaks down every 10 seconds as soon as he sits in it. His transmissions have been pulled out flat, and this truck has a huge warp where the driver sits.
What?
I was making a fat joke about a friend of mine.
Yeah, but, I mean, considering that, then that means that your friend weighs more than 73 tons.
He needs exercise. I tried to get him to lose 1 million pounds by working out, but he ate the treadmill and he ate the dumbbells. He thought he'd lose weight by eating them.
But yeah, number 12 weighs 73 tons.
More than 73.
But that's all the time we got for today. But do you guys want to say some? Do you guys want to say anything before we continue the next time?
Yeah, I've got something to say. Got nothing. For today's life lesson, don't be a Michael. Don't eat the treadmill. You're not going to lose weight if you do that.
This is completely out of context.
That's the point.
I should make a compilation of like burning subjects moments completely out of context.
Fast.
Should I do that?
Yes. Wait. I've got something you should add to it. Ready?
What?
Ready?
What?
Oh God, what is it?
What?
Squeak, squeak! I'll break your feet.
Of course. But anyway, though, we will see you guys in 2 weeks. But Jim and Josh, thank you guys for being here. And I'm sorry we couldn't do the cool wall. But I'm tired, and I think they are too, actually. Now that I think about it.
All right, yeah. Before you go, though, well, not off the stream, but before you go, as in after the stream ends, I got something to show you.
All right, well, I'm going to end the stream. Next time, we'll be talking about the rest of the locomotives because, oh my God, I spent so much time talking about switchers of all things because I'm a big switcher foamer. But I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.